Welcome, everyone, to our next VTCLA podcast. Today's guest is Jenn Miller-Arsenault, our Curriculum Director of the Year for VTCLA, and it's our privilege to have her joining us today. And I'm also joined here by Michael Berry, my co-host and co-president of VTCLA. Jenn, glad to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, Mike.
Could you start just by introducing yourself a little bit and talk about how you ended up where you currently are in the role that you're in?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for Washington Central. This is my 13th year in this position. I've been affiliated with this district for a long time, though. I moved to Central Vermont in 1994, and my very first teaching job in Vermont was teaching at Doty Memorial School in Worcester, which is part of our district. I taught first and second grade multi-age. Let's see. I got started in the education profession through Teach for America in the infancy of that organization back in 1992, and taught first grade on the border of Texas and Mexico for 2 years, moved here, taught primary school again for a few more years. Ultimately, I've served as an elementary principal. I've served as an early education coordinator. I've done a little bit of instructing for Southern New Hampshire University, and I've been in this position again for 12, going on my 13th year, with the exception of the year that I think we'll talk about a little later. The year that shall not be named. How's that? Is that good? Is that enough?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks for not giving away the questions that we're going to later. Also, thanks for previewing a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great, Jen. I learned a lot about you that I thought I knew you. What are the big three things that you've got going on in your district this year? If you had to narrow it down to your big three, what would those be?
Yeah, actually, our district went through a strategic planning process, and the board adopted our strategic plan last year. There are 3 goals and in that strategic plan, and I really feel like those things are guiding all of the work that we're doing in the district, my work included. And the goals are, I'll read them to you so you have them verbatim. Build and nurture a culture of well-being and inclusivity. Challenge, empower, and engage each student through evidence-based instructional strategies and curriculum and varied educational opportunities. And number 3 is foster and commit to responsible leadership that engages the community and communicates transparently. And those 3 goals are based on our core beliefs that we identified as an entire district. And they are merging together, I think, lots of bodies of work in which I've been engaged over a number of years, primarily related to Act 173, coordinated curriculum work, multi-layered systems of support, and also our district's commitment to humanity and justice work. So yesterday, actually afternoon, I'll give you a really specific example. Our district's curriculum council got together. That is a group of teachers and administrators across all of our schools and multiple content areas, general classroom educators, interventionists, special educators. And we got together to map out our work plan for the year. It was our first meeting of the year, really building on the work that we had done to support the full implementation of Act 173, but also really grounding ourselves in our district's core beliefs and in our strategic plan as well. So really thinking about pulling together not only our expectations and commitments for our students academically, but also social emotional needs and transferable skills and functional skills for us. So those are our major bodies of work for the year.
You ought to have that wrapped up by the end of the year nicely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very doable.
You know, the thing about that work that I think was particularly affirming, I would say, is that well-being and inclusivity really surfaced as a core belief for our school district. And a number of us got together for curriculum camp this summer and did a sort of a cross-check of the major components of functional skills and social emotional learning and cross-check them against our transferable skills. And it's all there. It's all right there. That was so exciting and affirming. And we can continue to, I think, renew and foster the commitments that we've made instructionally and grow our practices and think about how do we measure that? How do we know that we're doing well and serving our kids and meeting all of their needs? So the work is exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
A couple of things I'd like to ask about in that. So the third goal, the one around leadership, it feels very specific to administration. Is there a danger that this just becomes the lane of only administration and the rest of the organization doesn't own that?
Yeah, that is, Jeff, I love that question. So I was part of the strategic planning steering committee. And for a while in our working version, that goal and the core belief was transparent and responsible and transparent governance. And I remember having a conversation about how we actually really should change that word because it's about much more than governance. It's about leadership. It's the way that every single one of us as administrators, teachers, and students are communicating transparently, are making responsible decisions, those things. So that was a really intentional word change. And yes, there are action steps in that goal that are directly related to our school board and its actions and responsibilities. And I feel a responsibility to ensure that all of the systems we're growing are promoting responsible and transparent leadership. Yeah. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, no, and thanks for that answer. That adds some clarity. The other one I wanted to ask you about is your curriculum committee. I know that organizations have a lot of different approaches to distributed leadership relative to curriculum. So can you say a little bit more about the structure, some of the logistics of it all? And then it sounds like the strategic plan and Act 173 largely drive the work.
Yeah, I'm going to back up and talk about that part first. I think that we've been hungering for coherence in our district. I know we're not alone in the state. And especially as we just get our bearings again in a post-COVID era. So I've been really grateful for our district's strategic plan. As a way to bring coherence to the system, maintain coherence as a way not only to say yes to work, but to say no to work also, right? To keep the distractions off the table. The Curriculum Council is a group that's been in existence for a long time, really since I started as curriculum director here, because my wise curriculum directors in the field before me had established that approach, and it worked really well. We've actually in our district, in our collective bargaining agreement, it says explicitly that our teachers are part of the curriculum decision-making body. And so we have that, I guess, that added oomph to this organization. Before COVID, we used to it was fine for us to meet during the workday and come together and engage in this work. And we had ample substitute teachers and we could schedule it in ways that didn't detract too much. And then we floundered, quite frankly. I mean, that's my fault too, right? I just could never get us all around the table at the same time. And so last year, a few times actually, I would operate the same exact meeting twice in the same day at different times to attempt to get us all theoretically around the table. But this year, with the support of Curriculum Council members themselves and our Teachers Association and our leadership team, we've created Curriculum Council as a teacher leadership position. So I have the the liberty to have us meet outside of the contracted day and to pay teachers above and beyond contractual obligations. I am grateful to my colleagues for saying, yes, let's do it this way. And on yesterday, I had the best attendance I've had in years at that meeting, and it was thrilling. So we're going to meet, second and fourth Mondays when school is in session, after school hours to engage in this work, and to engage in work between meetings, actually. So that's feeling really positive right now.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks. Because I know that folks are wrestling with how to make this important and free up the capacity to do the work. So
Yeah. I think one thing that I would add to that, just for my colleagues in the field that's been working for us too, is we defined through our collective bargaining agreement what a teacher leader position is, including some prereqs for professional learning that folks have engaged in, not only about facilitating productive meetings and about designing adult learning. And so folks who were interested in those positions needed to demonstrate that they've had that professional learning. And then I've also created modules that sort of suffice, right? So that feels helpful as well.
Thank you. So let's talk about the year that you were superintendent, the COVID year. And the reason I asked the question is I'm always fascinated listening to leaders reflect on that time, particularly around what are they now carrying as some of the lessons learned and new perspectives. So from that angle, talk a little bit about your experience as the superintendent during a really trying time in education.
Yeah. It was absolutely stressful for me. I could never turn it off. I think one thing that emerged as something that I deeply appreciate about the experience was that it made me feel even luckier than I felt before, that I'm in a position that can focus on teaching and learning. It was amazing to me how little, as a superintendent, I had the time and the energy to think about teaching and learning. I appreciate there were so many superintendents, particularly in the Winooski Valley, who stepped up to be an amazing source of support. And I think the thing actually that I really appreciated and loved about that year, I think I could be bold enough to say that, was that I established a weekly communication with my school community in response to the ways that we were approaching COVID. And I mean, it was an email that I crafted each week, and I sent it to the full community. I would send it to our internal school community, and then I would share it with our school board so that they were completely in the loop. And since then, I sort of missed having a regular way to correspond with the internal community, with the faculty and staff here. And I don't know why it's taken me 2 years, but it took me 2 years to sort of come up with something that feels good and sort of the right size. And so I just actually earlier this month sent my first monthly correspondence to the faculty and staff, just to advance all of the work forward. So just a basic SMORE newsletter. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but around our local comprehensive assessment plan, the local comprehensive assessment system, universal design for learning. I am the liaison to our school board's education quality committee, and this was a way for me to not procrastinate in getting my presentations ready, because I want to send them out to the faculty now before they're going out to the ed quality committee, all of those things. And so that structure, I had been really missing that. I felt like I counted on it and sort of when I was the interim superintendent, just having that regular way to correspond. And as a principal back in the day, I relied on our school newsletter for the same thing. And I feel like I've hit something that feels like this sweet spot right now. I've only done the first issue. We'll see, but it got a decent number of hits, and I got some positive feedback. So hopefully it'll keep growing.
I cheated a little bit and asked you about the curriculum council, and that sort of bleeds into that question we were going to ask you around the structures you've built. Is there anything you wanted to add around professional learning that you feel is a pretty effective structure that you've built in your system?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working hard to promote instructional coaching in our district, and when that first started, honestly, probably like many districts, we had an instructional coach, but we didn't know what that meant or what that person was going to do. And we've been able to grow instructional coaching over the years, not only in terms of FTEs, but also in clarity about the role. And a few of us have engaged in some pretty deep professional learning related to tenets of instructional coaching that are most effective. And I think for me, that informs my entire approach to professional learning, which is essentially strengths-based, universally designed, and based on the tenets of positive psychology. I was a psych major back in the day, and so like figuring out this connection between positive psychology, feeling empowerment and hope and agency, and really trusting that teachers, maybe not our newest teachers in the field, but by and large, our teaching cadre, they are strong and they have the answers. We just need to ask good questions. And so that really informs a lot of our work. And we've, in these budget times, cut back on the FTEs of coaching. And so we're really trying to think about how do we create a coaching culture. Again, strengths-based, good questions, job embedded, when the reality is we have fewer and fewer FTEs devoted to instructional coaching.
Yeah, it's such a profound challenge right now. And
Yeah.
just to put a plug in for our September meeting, Jen will be running a workshop on that very issue, building a coaching culture. So thanks for that.
Yes, with Ellen Dorsey, Jeff,
With
who
Ellen
is
Dorsey,
the most
absolutely.
amazing instructional coach. I mean, she's amazing, and working with Ellen elevates my practice. So, yeah.
Thanks.
What do you see as the three big challenges facing Vermont schools in the coming years? In your experience in the last couple of years, what do you think's up next? So I've been thinking about this question, and I've been thinking about reframing challenges as opportunities. And so here's what I would say. One is declining enrollment, and I mean budgeting. In my mind, the sort of per pupil, it all goes hand in hand. That is something my district is really wrestling with right now, in ways that feel both hard and hopeful, I think I would say. And it is hard to hold that sometimes, to hold both things, that there's a sense of loss when we're talking about reconfiguration, and there's a sense of increased opportunity. And I think we're all going to end up needing to have these conversations. I think the literacy bill is an incredible opportunity for us. There will be some challenges in terms of implementing and continuing to grow and letting go of some past practice. And mostly, I think it's pretty exhilarating and overdue and exciting. And I'm grateful that in this district in particular, and with my colleagues, I mean, Winooski Valley folks, we talk about this a lot. People are doing good work, and I think that we're all going to grow as a state, supporting each other. And then the new ed quality standards, I think, will continue to inform our work, both in terms of knowing ourselves and our communities, and thinking about identity, and thinking about creating places and curriculum and instructional practices
that elevate all voices, lift all voices, and that help us live into values related to humanity and justice. And that's been something in my district. I feel really really fortunate to work in a place that values that work, and even still, it remains a challenge. And there are going to be times when we all mess up. And I think approaching the work with grace and humility is going to be really important.
Yeah, I'm interested about the intersection with the first thing you mentioned and the next two things you mentioned, the idea about this declining enrollment and need to reconfigure as an opportunity to then address literacy bill and the literacy needs and education quality standards reset. So it's pretty fascinating. So you shared a lot of different things that you're dealing with in your district. What is something you're really excited about as you start the new year in terms of the work in front of you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think the new way that we're structuring Curriculum Council that I mentioned earlier is really exciting. It feels like the right way to move all of the work forward. I think our district has been craving some consistency and stability and coherence, as I've said before, right? And our schools operate sort of very differently, just our elementaries in particular, right? We're all pre-K through 6, and we're staffed a little bit differently, and we have varying student populations in terms of just straight up numbers. And so it looks slightly different in each of those elementary schools. And yet I think we're moving toward unifying some practices in ways that do feel exciting. And to bring in that, to really be pairing that work, rigorous curriculum and instruction and assessment work with humanity and justice work feels absolutely just right. I would say we've had a, in my experience, I personally and we in our district are really good at starting things, and the work that we need to do is related to sustaining them, to actually make them the way that we are, the way that we do things. And so like I've been doing a lot of thinking and learning and trying related to routines and bandwidth and habit. And so it's exciting to think about the affirming work we've done, but then how to make it just the way things are here. I'm excited to think about that. Those systems and structures that we put in place that we can sustain over time.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this idea around evolving things versus creating new things, and the mindset around it. We're often just trying to improve and adjust and adapt the things that we are currently already doing, and yet we often frame it as new thinking, new approaches, and it just creates this mindset of capacity overload and initiative fatigue. And so it's kind of fascinating to think about it as really framing it around, this is a next natural evolution based on the evidence that we now have in front of us. So yeah, thanks for that.
So we like to kind of close out the conversation by letting you give a shout out to someone in education land that has been impactful in your career or your thinking, or it can be beyond the education world too. But who would you like to give a shout out to?
So I've been thinking about this question too, and really love listening to my colleagues who did the podcast beforehand. And one thing I want to say is that every time anybody shares anything, there is always a nugget that I can take that I appreciate. So if it's trusted assessments or the way that one district approaches proficiencies or professional learning, it's really, I'm grateful to all of my colleagues for putting their practice out there and sharing. I am grateful for our Winooski Valley crew. I feel like that crew, the minute someone puts out an email and a question, there are so many responses, and together we do better work. So that crew in particular. And then I was thinking about, there are two folks who, when I was in the first entering this role, stood out to me as folks that I admired and looked up to. One is Val Sullivan, who was my mentor, and really any success that we've established, Curriculum Council, Curriculum Camp, is because Val was my mentor, and she helped me figure that out based on her experience. Another person that I would want to acknowledge is Noelle Bryant. And Noelle sort of was nearing retirement, right, sort of quietly around COVID. And I never had the opportunity to properly thank her for her wisdom, for her sort of gentle toughness. That sounds a little oxymoronic, but and for her example of someone who was always seeking to learn and do better in her practice. So I think those are folks I would like to say thanks to.
Thank you, Jen. Well, thanks for joining us today. This was some fascinating stuff, and I think our members will benefit from hearing you talk about it. So yeah, thanks for taking time out of your busy day for joining us at today's podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you both.